Okay, part 2 of the tiny entity causing major disturbances in the book Quantum Journeys, Tales of Multidimensional Healing and Discovery. We had just left off on the question I asked of my client who was in a hypnotic trance, who are the higher ones? Go back and watch part 1 so that you can catch up if you haven't seen it yet. So there was no response at first. I then asked, what happens to babies that are aborted, since that's such a hot topic among us earthbound folks? And then it said, there is no death, only life. Some of you know this, others choose not to know, some forget. A fragment of the soul can get stuck or trapped if the mother vessel won't let go. So part of them stays to comfort, to help. But they lose track, and sometimes they get lost, they just forget. And those parts sometimes stay for an entire lifetime, sometimes many lifetimes. It's easy to forget when you're on the other side. This was all incredibly eye-opening to me because I too have experienced this type of loss. Consider my mind blown at this point, but of course I needed to stay present for my client, so I asked if it would be possible to release this soul fragment from my client's body so that it could reunite with its own higher consciousness and continue on its own soul's journey, letting my client also continue on hers. And this is where things got very, very interesting. My client's inner healer, who had been silent through much of this, chimed in saying, we need help. There is too much damage to the energetic body. I have come to understand from sessions like this that the energetic body is much bigger than the physical or the emotional body. Some people might call it an aura. And I'm not sure if that's exactly the same thing. I don't see auras, but I do communicate with energetic bodies. I think it might be the same thing. That's just as a side note. Anyway, so it's much bigger than the physical or the emotional body, and it is essentially an antenna, an amplifier, and a receiver all in one, having to do with frequencies, vibrations, and energy. It is made up of both waves and particles, either or and. It can effortlessly move from one of these states to the other, and it is affected by our emotions at any given time. It acts as both a magnet and a repellent and fluctuates between these states as well, all based on our emotions and expectations and beliefs. I asked the client to please invite all of her helpers and guides to help release this little lost soul fragment. I asked my client to please invite all of her helpers and guides and ancestors that were available to her to help release this little lost soul fragment from her body. And she said that she felt as if everyone that she had ever loved from this lifetime and beyond came to stand around her in a circle. And there was her father, and beckoning to Jeremy to come join in. He was reluctant at first, Jeremy, the little baby soul fragment, was reluctant at first because my client was still grieving and not fully ready to let him go. But as soon as she saw her father reach out and more or less scoop Jeremy's little soul fragment out of my client's womb, she sighed deeply, and her previously almost rigid body just went slack. It was the first time in our session that I'd witnessed her completely surrender. It's important to note here that complete relaxation is not necessarily indicative of a trance state when doing quantum journeys hypnosis. A person can be in a trance and fully relaxed or not fully relaxed. It is preferable to be fully relaxed, but it's not necessary. I asked my client's inner healer and highest consciousness if Jeremy was fully released, and I got a yes. I asked if we could go ahead and heal any damage done to my client's energetic, emotional, and physical bodies that were a result of this unintended attachment. And once again, I was told they needed more help. This was a first for me. Who else could possibly be required? And then my client said, wow, okay, there is someone or something so vast that I can't see them. It's too bright. I just can't see anything anymore, but I feel it. I feel like it's an angel. Oh, I'm hearing it's an archangel. It's Raphael. He is enveloping us all with his wings. It is so bright. She began crying again, but this time it was very obviously tears of joy as she was smiling bigger and bigger. And at one point she just opened her eyes and said, it is done. I wasn't expecting that. I was taught to emerge hypnotic clients gently, not all at once like that. But in this session, she emerged all on her own with the sense of Archangel Raphael still healing her. She looked right at me, eyes wide open, and said, it is done. What the? So I asked if she was still in a trance, and she said, no, I think for the very first time ever, I see everything very clearly. It's like I've been unhypnotized or something. We laughed at that, and I got her some water because her multidimensional consciousness just basically ran a marathon. Fast forward to a year later when I found out through social media that she'd given birth to a baby boy. I was amazed and incredibly curious as to why she hadn't even told me she was pregnant, especially because I sent out multiple follow-ups after our session. She responded that the whole experience was just a little bit too crazy for her. She wasn't even sure if she believed in archangels. She honestly didn't even know where to start by telling me about it. She said our session was all like a bizarre dream that she didn't quite understand and she wasn't sure she believed in. There was almost a sense of fear in her voice. So I told her, I didn't heal anything. That was all you. I just facilitated the communication that you needed in order to get what you were ready for. I can't take credit for this. And I couldn't take it away from you any more than I could give it to you. It's not about me. She seemed to feel better after that and sent me some photos of her very beautiful and healthy baby boy, to which I said, good job, Mama. And she burst into tears, happy tears. A few months later, she emailed me that her religious upbringing didn't include some of the possibilities that she had experienced in our session, so she concluded that I must have hypnotized her into having those experiences. She seemed to believe that I was the one with the power and that I somehow bestowed this magical thing upon her, and that, of course, meant that I could also somehow take it away. So I reassured her once again that this is not the case at all, but that it might be a cool superpower for me to have as long as I only used it for good. So I wanted to share my little footnote about this. It's not uncommon in my field, people believing that the hypnotist has some sort of magical power. We don't, by the way. What we have is the skill to take people into a state of consciousness or a brainwave state where they can create changes themselves. Whatever changes they are willing and ready to make, they're the ones doing all the hard work. So there is another interesting thing that can and often does occur with hypnotic change work called the apex problem. And this is where the client makes the changes within themselves so easily and effortlessly as a result of their hypnotic session or their hypnosis session that they honestly don't recall how bad they felt before the session, before they made the changes. And so that makes sense. If the neural pathways themselves have shifted to such a degree that they are now resourceful instead of harmful, then they're not going to remember what it felt like when it was harmful. Therefore, they don't have the ability to emotionally connect with how they felt before, because now that entire neural pathway is over here. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'm going to keep doing more and more of these stories. There's a whole bunch of them. Myself and 18 of my students and graduates from Quantum Journeys Hypnosis Academy put this together, and Quantum Journeys Tales of Multidimensional Healing and Discovery. Thanks so much, and go like and subscribe if you want to hear more of these.